or learning. Okay, the recording started. I forgot to wait for a second, so I'll repeat that. Welcome, everybody. I am Mariaemma, and our session title today is Learning Styles or Learning Disabilities, and I'm very happy to be here and to have you join us. We've done a sound check, and it looks like that's all okay. So the next thing is to see where everybody is from. And we have our volunteer moderators, Song, is helping us this morning. So thank you, Song. And she's brought up a map, and I believe you will tell them how to work the map. Song, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Everyone, you should see the map, and you should see some icons on the left-hand side. Click on the second one, which has a little star. Yes, everyone's doing it. That's great.
Oh, there we go. We have a California, looks like the East Coast, Southern East. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. And I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to go for about 30 minutes, and I would like to then open it up to questions. I want to leave plenty of time for questions because I know that this topic is one that people are really concerned about. So I want to be able to answer all of your questions. And Song will also keep an eye on the comments that you're making. I see Elizabeth had something about an iPad, and so she will also be keeping an eye on that so that if there's any question in between, technical questions, she can help you with that. All right, so let's get started here. So, learning styles or learning disabilities. I have my email and phone number here in case you have questions later or want to write me, but it's also on the last slide, so you don't have to worry if you're not capturing it right now. I am going to introduce myself. I'm the co-author of Discover Your Child's Learning Style, the book, and Midlife Crisis Begins in Kindergarten, another book, and our online learning style profile. I have a master's degree in education and California life teaching credentials for regular and special ed. And I've been working in this field for more than 25 years as a speaker, trainer, and consultant for parents and teachers. And I'm also the co-founder of the LearningSuccess Institute, and there we focus on learning success for every child. So, did you know that more than 95% of kindergartners feel good about themselves? This is an actual statistic. More than 98% of high school seniors do not feel good about themselves. 50% of students who begin college drop out. And in 1985, we had the ADD label on 500,000 people, and in 2006, it was more than 6 million. So, you know, what's going on? Why is this? Well, one of the reasons is, or the biggest reason actually, is that the majority of the population are what we call inventing or thinking creating learners. They are tactile, hands-on picture learners. Yet most teaching is geared for listening and print learners. And therefore, we label all of these other people that have a different learning style as having some kind of a learning disability because they are not predominantly listening and print learners. So, here's an interesting, interesting situation. Hands-on and picture learners are actually considered special needs. It's interesting, but it's also tragic and actually damaging. Because what happens is, since the majority of people and kids, starting out as kids, you know, and students, if the majority are hands-on and picture learners, what happens in school is because nobody knows what to do, or they might, but the system doesn't allow them, then they're labeled special needs because, oh, well, they can't do it the regular way, you know, the regular normal way, which is listen to me, the teacher, take written notes, read this paragraph, answer the questions. So do hands-on and picture learners really have learning problems? Are they inferior learners? Well, it would seem to be that that would not be the case, especially if they are the majority in the population. So let's explore this a little more. What about IQ? Well, scientists discovered that if you get a big enough sample, anything you measure makes that graph shaped like a bell. So we've all heard of the bell curve. The problem is that educators decided it must be possible to measure intelligence and get the same results, because scientists were measuring things like rainfall or the depths of oceans and lakes and, you know, things in nature. Well, educators took that on and figured intelligence is something in nature. So they made up a test based on their definition of intelligence, and that's how we got the bell curve for education. So it looks like this. And so the problem is that because we are testing in the classroom and as well as on the IQ test, we're testing for those listening and print learners. So who do you think is going to look intelligent? So here it is, you know, here's that average. Up here, a very few people who are those listening and print learners are going to score as more intelligent. So that is a real problem in our education system. The bell curve is used to label people from very smart to below average to slow and even learning disabled. Now I know the official definition of learning disabled is that they have average to above average IQ, you know, but they are, they have gaps. So they might be real high on one thing on the IQ test and real low on something else. But you know what? Really, that's a bunch of garbage, because everybody is high and low on different things. And so if you are brilliant in science, for example, and you're a very hands-on learner, you're going to look as below average or even just average or slow on the IQ test. So this bell curve makes assumptions about intelligence based on a very narrow definition, and therefore many children are always left behind, the majority. As long as we use bell curves, that no child left behind act, it can never become a reality because you're always using the bell curve. So it just can't work, just based on its own definition. Now, hands-on learners are considered below average in intelligence, first because of how they score on the IQ test, but also because in the classroom, oh, well, they need special things. That's what we look at it as an education system, that if they need special things, they must not be as intelligent. Yet they make up 50 to 60% of the population, and that's our own definition of average. And if you combine it with picture learners, it makes 80%. So our potentially most brilliant people, the mechanics, engineers, builders, architects, musicians, scientists, artists, inventors, discoverers, entrepreneurs, all of these people are left out. And what happens, what we don't think about is that if hands-on and picture learners are the average learners, the quote average because they're the majority, if we taught to those learners, they would be the ones getting the A's. So this is really something to think about, especially if you yourself have been labeled learning disabled or you have children who have been labeled either formally or informally. And so here's a little cartoon, Dennis the Menace. I got a lot of answers, but no one ever asked the right questions. And that is exactly, precisely what happens with all of our brilliant students sitting in the classroom. Well, for one thing, they're not even allowed to ask questions, really, because if you're asking questions that you've thought of because of the topic at hand, and it's a little, what the teacher considers a little off subject, then you're disruptive or you're ADD because you're not focusing, and nobody takes the time to think, oh my gosh, this is like an Einstein type of child. They heard me say this and it took them over there, and they know all about that, and now they're bringing in a question about it. You see, this is brilliant behavior that we, as an education system, consider defective. So, in our learning success approach, we've renamed LD. LD stands for Learning Disabilities to Learning Deceived. Different does not mean inferior. We need to stop labeling and start looking at how each student learns and thinks so that every child can shine, truly shine, and they can. We just have to make it happen or allow it to happen. So who gets all the A's? Did you realize that only 3 to 5 students in a classroom get all the A's? Just go around to any classroom or think back to your own classrooms. Maybe you were one of those that got all A's. I was. I had the perfect magic learning style formula that fits the traditional classroom. So I got all A's from the second I started school till I finished. And I remember the other kids who got A's, and there were only about 3 of us. So what about all the others, you know? Were you one of the A students, or were you one of the ones that wished you were an A student or felt ashamed or always thought you weren't good enough? And what about your own children? These A students usually become teachers, secretaries, executive assistants. Well, why? Because it fits their learning styles. And when they become teachers, you see they're comfortable there because school worked for them. And so now they're passing on the same thing. And if you're a parent and you're homeschooling, you have that image in your mind. Whether or not you did well in school, you know, we're kind of brainwashed to think, well, that's what school is supposed to be. These are the things you're supposed to be able to do to get that A. So again, at the bottom, I've got this in red. Only a small number have the magic learning style formula that fits the traditional classroom, and yet those are the people that school is really set up for. So we have all these lost potentials. The majority of inventors, scientists, musicians, poets, as I said before, artists, missionaries, creative people, the majority of them are inventing, thinking, creating, hands-on, picture learners. These are the kids who are often labeled ADD, ADHD, dyslexic, learning disabled, and we'll take a look at these in a few minutes. We'll take them apart a little more. These are the kids who experience failure almost daily in school and who don't realize how smart they are and that they have unlimited possibilities. They don't realize they could go to college if that's what they want. They could start their own businesses. They could go to graduate school. They could go for a special career, that they could actually choose what they want to do. But mostly they're deflated, and we've given them the message that they're not good enough, not smart enough, not competent enough to go for what they want. So kids see themselves as we see them. So how do we see them? Do we see them as respected, worthy, that they're capable? Or do we see them as bad and wrong, stupid, incapable? Now, I know that we wouldn't use these words, although I've heard teachers actually tell students these things. But as parents, as homeschoolers, I'm thinking that we wouldn't actually say to our child, well, that you were stupid, you're stupid. But it's the message, the nonverbal message that the child reinterprets whatever vibe you're giving out, whatever disappointment, whatever worry, that they're not measuring up. This is how they interpret. I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm stupid, I'm incapable, I'm unworthy, I have to shape up. So what are we giving them evidence for on a daily basis? How do you really see your child? The number one need for real learning, real deep down joyful learning to take place is safety. And of course physical safety is there. We need to know we are physically safe. So in schools, for example, where kids are afraid that somebody might punch them or hurt them, that's not a good learning situation. If you're worried about that, you cannot learn. Now, for most of us, in most of our situations, that is not an issue. So let's go to the next one. How about emotional safety? No one will laugh, scold, punish, or be upset if I don't get this. And it goes along with learning safety. Mistakes are okay. I can try things out. I can take my time. I can learn the way I learn. This is so important for confidence and self-esteem. It's the number one thing. It's the totally number one thing that a child feels safe and believes that the adults around him or her believe in him or her. So our learning success laws are learning doesn't have to hurt, success leads to more success, and coaching, rather than trying to stuff information in, coaching, bringing out their brilliance, that's what brings out the star in every person. So on the system I helped to create, we have 5 aspects of learning style. The little chart shows you all of them: disposition, modality, environment, interests, and talents. I'm going to briefly touch on dispositions and modality this morning. And I'm going to switch, go to the next slide so that we can take some of these apart. You know what, let me go back again just for a second. Okay, let's just do this under dispositions. Performing is the one, these are very quick descriptions. Performing needs to move. In order to learn, I need to move. I like risk, adventure. I got to have change. It's too boring to do the same thing all the time. And I've got to be in movement. I'm going to skip producing for a sec. Inventing, ask a lot of questions. How about this, and how does that work, and what if I do that? Some of the kids do it internally, especially if they've been shamed, not even intentionally by adults, but they've felt shamed. Mostly for inventing people, what you hear a teacher or a parent say is, why are you asking that question? It has nothing to do with what we were talking about, but it does. And if you took the time to ask, you would find out how brilliant they are in having connected that question to the topic. Relating, inspiring, these are the people who need to talk, to discuss, to collaborate. They don't like competition. Oh, by the way, performing at the top loves competition and games, and they thrive on that. Relating, inspiring, it's all got to be fair. I'll even let you win. If you're a relating, inspiring person, you might be laughing right now because you know you do that. Even when you're playing games to win, if you're too far ahead, you're going to feel sorry for the other person and, scale back a little bit. Thinking, creating, these are the people who are often called flaky, and they're kind of in their own world. They are the big philosophers, poets, artists, deep thinkers, the idea people. Now, inventing and thinking, creating people are very often labeled ADD, and performing is very often labeled hyperactive. And if you've got a combination of perform with either invent or think, create, they're usually labeled ADHD. Now, in modality, we've got different types. Again, auditory, we've got listening or verbal, meaning you have to say it out loud and hear yourself. For visual, we have picture or print. For tactile kinesthetic, we have hands-on, whole body, sketching, and writing. Now, looking at these, you can probably guess which are the dispositions and which are the modalities that fit the magic formula for the classroom, the traditional classroom. So dispositions is producing. I skipped over that one because that's the one, and that's one of my high dispositions. That's why I did so well in school. You plan ahead, you have your list, you have a calendar, you know, where you've scheduled up to the next 6 months or even a year. You're very efficient. You're always looking for what will save time and how you can get organized. It's all about organization and order and planning ahead. So that's one of the pieces of the magic formula. And under modality, you've got to be strong in auditory listening, visual print, and tactile is the writing. And if you've got these 4 elements, you're probably going to be one of those 3 to 5 people that get all the A's in a traditional classroom. Now, if we switched the classroom or the homeschool program or whatever teaching program it is, and we provided lots of strategies for these other learners, inventing, thinking, creating, performing, hands-on, whole body, picture, etc., suddenly that other person who used to have the magic formula like me would not be getting the A's necessarily unless someone then worked with me. You see, then I would be labeled the special needs person. All right, so here are some examples. The verbal learner who needs to say things out loud, talk it out, discuss, they're often labeled disruptive. A sketching learner who needs to doodle is often labeled ADD because what we say is, oh, look, they're not paying attention. They're not focusing on the information. They're in their own world. Whole body, they need to move and experience their learning. These are labeled hyperactive. Nonprint learners, one of the things we still make people do is write their spelling words over and over again when they are not, quote, good spellers. It doesn't work. These are some of the people that are labeled dyslexic. Picture learners, hands-on learners that are non-print learners, they're the ones who are labeled dyslexic. And did you know that dyslexia or dyslexic really means trouble with, trouble with the language, lexic. And that's all it means. And really, they're picture learners and they're hands-on learners. And they need a specific way of learning to read, as well as they need time, because non-print learners usually are not ready to learn to read till much later, not in kindergarten, first, second, or sometimes even 3rd grade. And then inventing and thinking, creating people are most often labeled ADD or ADHD. So here I'm going to have a series of slides very quickly just to show you that there are options. So for example, people who have trouble with spelling, it's not that there's something wrong with them, they're just not those print and writing learners. And as you know, English is so totally ridiculous because we have words from every language on earth. And yes, there are some rules, but then the rules are always broken. So it's very hard to learn for a non-print learner. If we were in Italy or Spain, you know, Spanish or Italian, all these non-print learners would do really well because every letter says the same thing all the time and you just string them together. Did you know that there's no such thing as spelling bees in those countries? Because everybody can spell, because there aren't any weird spelling configurations that you have to memorize and, you know, have a talent for. So that's why we have spelling bees. But here's an example of how you would teach weird words to someone who's not a print learner. This is a picture, and it's not a picture where you have the word friend and then a little picture next to it that shows two friends. No, the picture is embedded right in the word. So you do weird, funny, cute things with the actual letters. And if you're thinking, well, I can't do that, I can't think of it, you don't have to, because the child will. When you introduce this, if this meets that learning style need of that child, if it matches, then they're going to take off and do it for themselves. But you do have to give them a couple of examples so that they get what you're trying to show them. Learning success writing. We call it mapping. It's been called many things. This is just a real quick little visual of it, but most people in the population are non-writing learners. Doesn't mean they can't learn to write, but it's not going to happen with a person just saying, write this paragraph. There is no curriculum out there that shows how to write from the beginning and learning strategies to brainstorm and put it in a visual form like this, step by step. And that's what we need for people to learn to write and be comfortable with it and not scared of it. Okay, some more examples using pictures and rhythms and rhyme will meet the visual picture modality, the auditory verbal modality, music talent. See, this is what we're going for. What are the options for teaching? What are the strategies for teaching students who actually are in the majority and we don't provide these things for them? So these are examples for you to see. Finger games. A lot of you know about the 9 trick for the multiplication facts. And so this is a chart showing that. But again, they're games that show the hands-on, the tactile kinesthetic hands-on, how to meet the need for that person, and even body coordination talent. Here's something called the Wonder Number game that we have recommended to clients forever. This meets the need of the performing disposition of the game and competition for visual picture learners, for hands-on learners. This was developed by a husband and wife who were both teachers and were tired of their students being afraid of math, not liking math. So they developed this over many years in their own classrooms to the point where their students, they were in a very low-performing school district, and their students began scoring very high on the standardized tests to the point that they were accused of cheating. And whoever was, administration, made them test their students again, and of course they came out with the same high scores. It's a great game. Another example of hands-on, touch math is another curriculum out there that you can get, and you see the little points on the numbers, so the kids can touch those points and actually count them. So if you're doing the 5 up at the top, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then it slowly transitions them into having memorized them or being able to do them quickly. Here's another example of providing something in a way that allows students to see their successes, so that you could have a multiplication chart and have it right there in front of the student all the time. So if the student doesn't have to worry about the times tables because they haven't memorized them, they can go further. They can go into higher math. A lot of times students have a really good head for math, but it's the rote that they're struggling with. So get rid of that struggle. Put the chart in front of them. If there are a few they need to learn, they can even go through the chart, and you see here this one is filled in with all the ones they know. So they just have a few that they have to memorize. And that's helpful too, to see, wow, I know all of those. There's only a few that are left. So we're always looking to focus on their successes, not on their failures. And a calculator, same idea. Kids are more interested in math if they have a calculator. I know. People are going to say, well, then they'll never learn to add. You know what? We have calculators. Really? Who in your household, adults that is, will try to add a whole list of numbers? Don't you use the calculator? If you don't, you're, one of those rare people. So give your child a calculator if your child struggles with rote. And in fact, you'll be teaching him a great life skill, because you really have to know math concepts. You have to know when to add, when to subtract, how to multiply, what do you use percentage for, and all of that. And I can tell you that when you do this, kids get more interested in math, they'll do it, and they'll start to memorize. And they'll start to be able to do the processes on paper. Because you've taken the pressure off, and now they're relaxed and they're ready to learn. So I believe that teaching without knowing a child's unique learning needs and styles is like building a house without a blueprint, or taking a road trip without looking at a road map. What we really do well is look at all kinds of curriculum, and look at what do we have our desk, do we have pens, do we have all the supplies, in other words, and do we have a great curriculum? But what's a great curriculum? If you don't know your child, your child might not even do well on a desk. There are environmental needs. Some people do better on the floor. I do. I've always done all of my homework and studying for tests on the floor, spread out. Nobody bothered me because I was an A student, so nobody questioned, why are you doing that? They just left me alone. But sometimes students who need to do that, who are, quote, not the good students, are told that doesn't work. You have to sit up at your desk and, be serious. And so the environment that we set up for the students, the curriculum we choose, means nothing if we don't know how that person learns best. So begin with learning success. Become your child's or student's best learning success coach. And by that we mean make sure you're following these laws. Learning doesn't have to hurt. If your kid's crying, something's wrong. If you're crying, something's wrong. Success leads to more success, and coaching brings out the star. And so that's the end of me talking, basically. And so now it's time for questions and answers. I will answer your questions. So if you would type in your questions in the chat box, I will be glad to answer them. So I'll give you a minute to do that. You can ask about anything that has to do with, learning disabilities, learning problems, or how people learn in general, or learning styles. I'm open to all of it. I see that Cindy says, this is helping me have words to describe what I'm viewing with my children. A speaker who talked about consumer-producer yesterday rang a bell for the consumer side of things, but I didn't like the producer side he was talking about. It's too much like school. It's about inspiring creators, inventors, innovators, etc. I like that. Yes, thank you, Cindy, for that comment. Okay, so we've got a question. So how can we really tell if a child is having a learning disability, or just we're addressing him, her with the wrong learning style? That's a great question. So let me answer it by saying hardly anyone has a learning disability. Truly, truly, I have been doing this for over 25 years. My master's is in special education. When I first started, that was what I did. I was a specialist in learning disabilities, and I tested for them, and I diagnosed, and I was that person in the traditional system that said, you're dyslexic, you're this, you're that. After 11 years, I couldn't do that anymore because all the students I was working with were teaching me things, and I was thinking, this is bizarre. There's nothing wrong with this person, so what if they're, you know, later reading or later on this, or they don't get it this way? And I was experimenting and finding, oh, look, if we change it and do this, they can get it. So why is that called a learning disability? So that's what I'm hoping that you can understand. Learning disabilities, true learning disabilities, are so rare, 1 in million. It's all about learning styles. Find out how your children learn best. And, you know, you can go to our website to get information about that, LearningSuccessInstitute.com. We have a lot of information there. The traditional testing that the school counselors, the school psychologists, or even regular educational psychologists do are all set up to tell you what's wrong. This is wrong, and that's wrong. What I do is I tell you what's right. Let's find out what's right. Where are your strengths? Where are your capabilities? What works for you? And isn't that what we want people to know as adults? That is exactly, you know, and in fact, the sports people know this really well. If you have a great quarterback, nobody says to that quarterback, oh, you know what, your left side's a little off. Let's give you hours and hours and hours of practice so you get better there. No. What do they say? And I'm not a sports expert, and I know this, so I know many of you out there are very familiar with this concept. What they say is to the rest of the team, hey, play to this guy's good side, or play to this guy's, you know, he's got this great strategy. Everybody fit in with that strategy, because you're not going to waste time with this person who has this great talent doing it this way, trying to teach them to do it a different way. So if you're interested, go to our website, get more information. The best thing to do is to give your child and yourself a great learning style profile, and we have created one if you're interested in that. So I hope I answered that question for you. Now we've got, a child could display a combination of dispositions in such a scenario. What could be an appropriate learning style? Yes, so a child can have a combination. I mean, everybody has a combination. So you're not just, you know, all performing or all inventing or all listening modality. It's a combination, and we want to look at your highest dispositions, your highest modalities, your best learning environment, the combination of those things. You might need noise, you might need quiet, you might need bright light, you might need low light. These are some of the environmental things. We want to look at your talents and your interests. So you could be a combination, say, inventing and relating inspiring. So then we look at, well, what are the characteristics there, and what do you need to meet the needs for those? You might be a print learner and a hands-on learner. You might be an auditory listening learner and a whole body learner. So we look at your top 3 modalities always. And so anyway, that's one of the ways. So when you say what could be an appropriate learning style, I'm not sure what that means. Okay, so DePauli wrote again, could different learning styles confuse a child? No. We're the ones that are confused. Kids know what they need. Sometimes there are kids that come in my office, you know, with their parents for the first time, and the child grabs a pen or a pencil and starts twiddling it, and what do the parents say? Stop that! Look at her! Listen to what she's saying! And what I say is, oh no, that's perfectly fine. Look, that child knows how to meet the need for movement in a legitimate way. He's not jumping up and down, he's not throwing anything, he's not, you know, yelling, he's not being inappropriate. He simply picked this up and is starting to twirl it. We need to encourage those things and teach them even more strategies for those kinds of, you know, learning styles. So the kids are not confused, believe me. they really know these things about themselves. They don't know how to verbalize it. They don't know how to talk about it. But when we start talking about it and acknowledging, wow, it's magic. You just free them up, and they love it because they know you've recognized something in them, and yes, this is how they really are. Let's see. I'm loving what you're saying. This is Cindy. The one thing that I feel we need to get a step further is understanding and giving value to a different time frame for learning various subjects. For instance, we can use mind maps to teach a creator how a producer expresses their ideas. But what about valuing making movies as expressing ideas or creating comics, and then see, oops, it jumped, and then see how that builds on to become print at that child's developmental time? So my question is, you recognize a different time frame? Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you said that. It's hard to talk about everything at the same time, you know what I mean? And so I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. One of the things we love, I mean, this is what we do the most. When I have a consultation, this is what I do. What do you love? What do you love to do? What works for you? What are your talents? What are your interests? And the whole program is built around that. And absolutely, making movies, creating slideshows, building models, making computer programs, whatever it is, building a garden, these are all absolutely as valuable and equal to making a map. I didn't mean to imply, if I did, that we're still trying to sort of straitjacket kids into, you know, well, okay, you're not writing now, so let's figure out a way to get you to write. Of course, we want them to have basic skills, basic writing skills, all the skills they'll need as adults, but not everybody has to be an amazing writer. Not everybody has to be an amazing speller. Not everybody is going to be a doctor. Not everybody is going to be a gardener. So what we're after is, who are you? Here I am. I'm your mentor. I'm your coach. I'm your guide. And I am here to help you bring out the best, learn about yourself, discover yourself. So creating comics, these are all things that are you know, recommended when I work with kids. Some kids love cooking, for example, so everything's geared about that. Well, cooking around the world, and they're learning about the cultures and geography because they can see where the places are. And what else? The history of fashion, the history of makeup, the history of the wars. It's limitless, it's endless. Unschooling is one of the things I also love to talk about. So whether you are you have a child who needs more structure and thrives on that, or needs more freedom and thrives on that, or is going to take the next 3 years only creating comics and that's all they do, it's all good. It's all good. And in between, here and there, they're going to learn the skills because they're engaged. So we've got, I have a boy with dyslexia. He's an incredible audible and visual learner and tried to build on his strengths with audiobooks and reading to him and his brother. We're working through the Davis program right now. He gets very upset when he makes mistakes, even though I say it's all learning. I'm encouraged to look further into visual tools and sources for him. Great, Elizabeth. And also, can you type in how old he is? So that I have an idea and can give you some more. He's 13. Okay, so he's in 8th grade. And so why are we using the label dyslexia? What exactly is it that's going on with your son? He's unschooled, okay. And what are the things that happen in his reading that makes you, you know, think of him as dyslexic? If you could write that in. When we have someone who is struggling with reading, we can do two things, and this is one of the amazing, amazing opportunities for homeschoolers that the traditional teachers and classrooms don't get. There are two things that can go on simultaneously. First, especially nowadays with all the technology that we have and all the ways that you can get information, they can learn all about everything without reading. You don't have to stop their learning. They don't have to stop their learning. They can listen to audiobooks. They can watch movies and videos. They can get on the internet and, you know, get information from, what is it called now? I just blanked out. But audio kinds of things where there might be text on the page, but it's read to you. You can get computer programs that have the audio feature as well. So you can go places, you can do field trips. These are all ways to learn, all ways to learn. So they're learning whatever it is, let's say a science topic, without worrying about not reading well, without struggling with that. And they can do projects, and they can, you know, give you back what they know in different ways as well. One of them is verbal. One of them is recording. One of them is pretending they're interviewing people. There are all kinds of ways they can make graphs and charts and do visual assignments, make scrapbooks, things like that. The other thing is that at the same time, or when they are ready, because they're already at different times developmentally, then you can start working on the reading skills. So let's see what she wrote. Reads and writes words backwards, gets very exhausted trying to read. His memory from listening is amazing. I've heard of these resources and I'm excited about them. Cindy says, if you haven't read aloud, it spotlights his different way of reading. I find these readers tend to skim across the top words to catch the visual. They're translating the words into pictures. That's absolutely right. Or they're trying, and some words can't be translated. That's part of the issue with them. If they're forced to bog down in every word to reading aloud, it makes them sensitive and their process is invalid. I would suggest having him read silently. Yes, he does read silently, and his brother is really enjoying silent reading. Okay, so all of this is good stuff. What I will recommend is if you're using the Davis program and you want to finish those exercises, it's kind of a sort of a retraining the brain exercise. But I will also recommend, Elizabeth, that perhaps you email me or contact me later, because I would like to go a little deeper into that. Most people who are not print learners, despite what many educators say, they actually need a very step-by-step Orton-Gillingham type of program. However, it needs to be a really good one and one that gives them fun. So I would like to talk to you a little bit more about that. Memorizing millions and millions of sight words doesn't work with non-print learners, which is usually the technique of choice, because people think, oh, they're picture learners. They'll learn the words as pictures. It doesn't work that way. They need to know what the code does, and they need to have a step-by-step program to teach them the code. But again, done in a way that's non-threatening, fun, easy, very doable for them, that gives them confidence. Otherwise, believe me, I've worked with many adults and did many years with our literacy program here in Ventura, and adults who struggle with reading or never learn to read always say, I never figured out the code. I don't know what these letters are supposed to do. And even if they've memorized a lot of words, they are so not confident. They have such little confidence in themselves. They're scared to death. They say, I know I memorized words, but I really can't read. I don't get it, and I'm always scared to death that if I'm reading something to somebody, the next word I come across, I won't know. So, let's see. I'm learning disabled, as is my daughter. She's autistic. We are unschooling. I'm not sure of her learning style. She's going to be 7. Also, I believe I may be dyslexic. I do tend to mix things up. Comprehending what I am looking at tends to be hard for me a lot of the time, especially when there's a lot of words, a lot of text. I tend to stare at things for a bit before. My father's dyslexic. So what I would like you to think about is start seeing yourself in a different way. Get rid of that word dyslexic. Find out what you are. I mean, I can already guess So I can give you some ideas right now. You're not a print learner, obviously. You're either a picture learner, a tactile hands-on whole body learner, or a combination of those. So we want to build those parts up and really celebrate them. They're just as good and equal to being a print learner. It's just that growing up, nobody showed you how to use those parts of yourself and then how to translate it into making reading easier and better for you. So if you're staring at a page of text, it's too much. It's like having gobbledygook, a whole page of gobbledygook in front of you. And also there's one other thing I want to mention. There is such a thing as if you're scotopic, there's such a thing as scotopic sensitivity, which means that the way your eyes are looking at a page, especially black and white, you know, black print on white, is very glaring. And so this could be an actual visual problem. Not all optometrists know about it, and some of them will say it's ridiculous, but you might get tested. This comes out of the Erlin Institute. Excuse me, if you want to look that up, Helen Erlin, she's the one who discovered this in teaching adults. If you have a scotopic sensitivity issue, it's just like any other eye problem or needing glasses or whatever. For this particular one, you might need colored overlays or colored lenses that are customized for you. So when you look at that page, the words are not either blurry or moving or falling off the page, or all the things that they can do when you have the scotopic sensitivity issue. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. She says, I love when I find professionals understanding this, supporting parents and educators moving in this direction. How do we get more parents and educators to get this paradigm shift? Well, I guess we're all working on it, all the professionals here at this conference, for example. And I know that in my own work with my business partner, Victoria, we do train teachers. We do seminars and workshops for parents. We work at schools. We have, we do everything we can to get people interested in really meeting the needs of every person, every child, every student. Okay, yes, you want me to spell scotopic sensitivity. I don't know if I'm, let me see how good I am at using, I'll try to type it right here. Oh yes, it's working. Sensitivity. See if I can make it bigger. All right. Look at that. Oops, I didn't catch the Y. I'm always excited when I can do something that involves technology, because this is not my strength, and people who have this talent are very valuable to me. So this comes out of the Erlin Institute. You can look up Erlin, all of that, the research and information there, but there are local optometrists and ophthalmologists that you might find in your own area or close by that have been trained at the Erlin Institute that can test for the scotopic sensitivity. Oh yes, see how silly I am? I could have typed it right here. Thank you, Song. Sensitivity. And yes, it's the Erlin Institute. Give an example of how a teacher might respond to your information, how they say they can apply it in schools, or do they feel their hands are tied? Okay, so there are multiple answers to that question because different teachers react differently. Some teachers are thrilled. We've had teachers come and take our training at our own office and go back and use as much as they can in their own classroom. They already are, leaning this way. They know it's right. They know it works. And they love getting more strategies to use in their classrooms. Some teachers love the information, but they're afraid. So again, it has to do with individual people and how they see it. They're just too afraid to do anything. They feel like they would be going counter to their district or their, school, the principal, whoever, and they're afraid to do anything. These are the teachers who sometimes burn out and leave, or they stick with it and they're very unhappy for their whole career. Let's see, what else? There are schools who call us and want to do this kind of thing, apply learning styles throughout their school or throughout their district. It's very rare, I can tell you, because most schools and even most homeschool programs, this is very important. Some of you are under the umbrella of either private homeschool programs or, public homeschool programs through your districts. Almost every school, whether they're a classroom school, a homeschool program, whether they're public or private, if you look them up, on the internet and look up their description, almost every single one has something about we personalize for your child. We customize for your child. We look at your child's learning styles. But they don't. In some cases, they actually they really believe they do, but they don't. And that's all I have time actually to say about that, but you can check it out for yourself. And so it's very rare that a school will call, and then this is what they say, because if they do call us, this is what they say. Our description, we promote, we say, etc. Our mission statement is that we personalize for our students, we customize for our students, we look at their learning styles, but we're really not doing that. Can you help us really do it so we can meet our mission statement? And that's when we're thrilled, when they call us. Now again, if it is a school, whether public or private, they do have, constraints because they have to follow certain rules. They're still testing and all of that. But we can bring them a long, long way and much further from where they were in terms of how they're approaching students in the classroom, and they really can personalize so much more than you might ever think in a classroom. And it actually frees up the teacher so the teacher becomes a true mentor and guide and can help more students individually than with the traditional model. So I see we have about 30 seconds left. I've had a wonderful time. Thank you so much, everyone that has attended, and for all of your comments and questions. And again, if you have any other questions left or would like to talk to me or get a recommendation for a program or a curriculum or material, feel free to email me or call me. And the information is here on this last slide. And of course, it's also being recorded, so you can go through it again if you want to. I think there's you'll receive instructions. There's a site where you can go, page where you can go, I think, where all of these are recorded. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.